never thought my birthday would be the day my heart broke forever. I was sitting in the living room, wearing the soft blue dress my late husband loved. The cake sat on the table, candles waiting, the smell of frosting and vanilla filling the air. My son, Adam, stood at the door with his wife, Laura. They weren't smiling. I thought they were planning a surprise, maybe a dinner or a small family party. Instead, Adam held a folder, papers that looked far too official for any celebration. "Mom," he said, not meeting my eyes. "We've found a place where you'll be more comfortable. You'll have people to talk to, medical care, everything you need." I blinked, confused. "A place?" I asked softly. "You mean a nursing home?" Laura smiled, that cold, polite smile that always made me feel small. "It's for the best, Margaret. You'll love it there." I tried to laugh, thinking it was some cruel joke. But when Adam lifted my small suitcase from the floor, the one I'd packed for my birthday weekend, my heart sank. Within an hour, I was sitting in the back of his car, watching the familiar streets blur past. He didn't play the radio like he used to. He didn't speak. He just dropped me at a sterile, quiet building, kissed my forehead awkwardly and said, "It's for your own good." As the door closed behind him, I stared at the cake box still in my lap. "Happy birthday, Mom," written in shaky pink letters. My hands trembled as I whispered to myself, maybe one day he'll remember who taught him how to love. That night, I cried quietly in my new room, unaware that fate had its own birthday gift waiting for me, one that would change everything. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a nurse drawing the curtains. The light stung my eyes, and for a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the beige walls, the humming machines, and the name tag on the nightstand. "Room 14, Margaret Lewis." Hit me all over again. I wasn't at home. I was in a place where people were left, not loved. Breakfast was served at 7 sharp. Oatmeal and coffee that tasted like regret. I sat at a long table with others who shared the same hollow look in their eyes. Some muttered to themselves. Others just stared out the window. One woman named Ruth leaned closer and whispered, "You're new here, aren't you?" I nodded. "Yesterday was my birthday," I said with a weak smile. "My son brought me here as a gift." Ruth chuckled dryly. "Then you got the same present I did. My daughter dropped me off after Christmas dinner." Her voice cracked on the word daughter. We both laughed, but it wasn't from joy. It was the kind of laugh that keeps you from crying harder. Days passed slowly. I watched families visit on Sundays. Hugs, flowers, promises to call more often. But no one came for me. I kept waiting, checking the clock, the door, even the parking lot. Then, one Thursday afternoon, the nurse wheeled in a cart filled with magazines and letters. "Mail call," she said cheerfully. I didn't expect anything. But there it was, a plain white envelope with my name neatly typed. Inside was a letter from the state lottery office. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail. But when I unfolded it and read the first line, "Congratulations, Mrs. Lewis, you are this week's lottery winner," my hands began to shake. The tears that fell this time weren't from pain. They were from something new, power. The nursing home had fallen into its usual rhythm. The quiet hum of television sets, nurses' soft footsteps in the hall, and the distant laughter of residents chatting over tea. Margaret sat by her window, watching the golden sunset fade into the horizon, wondering if her son ever thought of her. Just as she was about to turn away, there was a knock on her door. Startled, she rose slowly and opened it to find Tom, the young orderly who often helped with meals. He smiled shyly, holding a small envelope. "Mrs. Margaret, this came for you. No return address." Her hands trembled slightly as she took it. Inside was a lottery ticket, the very one she had bought weeks ago, the one she thought she'd lost. Someone must have found it and mailed it back. She smiled faintly, not thinking much of it, and tucked it under her book. Later that evening, as the residents gathered in the lounge, the TV announced the lottery results. Margaret almost didn't look up until the numbers flashed across the screen. Her heart raced. She reached for her purse, pulled out the ticket, and read the numbers again. A match. Every single one. The room spun as the realization hit her. She was now a millionaire. She sat in stunned silence, tears filling her eyes, not from joy but from disbelief. On the day her son abandoned her, she thought life had ended. But now, fate had just begun to write her next chapter. She whispered softly, Maybe this was meant to be." Margaret barely slept that night. Her heart was still pounding from the discovery. She had won the lottery. Not a few thousand, not even $1 million, but $20 million. She sat at her bedside table, staring at the ticket, the golden light of dawn slipping through the curtains. For a long moment she didn't feel happy, she felt hollow. Money couldn't erase the sting of being forgotten by her own son. At breakfast she said nothing. The other residents chatted about their grandchildren, about birthdays, about small joys. Margaret just smiled quietly, her mind racing. When Tom, the young orderly, stopped by to check on her, she finally spoke. "Tom," she said softly, "if you suddenly had everything you ever wanted, what would you do?" He thought for a moment. "I'd help my mom," he said simply. "She raised me alone. I'd give her the life she deserves." Margaret felt a lump rise in her throat. The life she deserves. Those words echoed in her mind all day. By evening she had made a decision. She called the lottery office to confirm her win and asked one simple question. "Can I remain anonymous?" The woman on the phone replied, "Of course, ma'am. Many winners do." Margaret smiled. That was all she needed to hear. She wasn't going to tell her son, not yet. Instead, she planned to change her life quietly, without fanfare, without apology. For the first time in years, she felt power return to her hands, and peace to her heart. A week after confirming her win, Margaret moved with quiet purpose. No one at the nursing home knew what she was planning. She began by asking to see the director. "I'd like to donate something," she said gently. The woman smiled politely, expecting maybe a few old books or a bit of furniture. But when Margaret handed over a check, the director's eyes went wide. This is enough to renovate the entire East Wing," she stammered. Margaret simply smiled. "I've lived here long enough to know what needs fixing," she said. She asked for one more thing, a private garden area where residents could sit among flowers, birds, and sunlight. "We all deserve a little peace," she whispered. Word spread quickly around the nursing home. The once quiet old woman everyone had pitied was suddenly the reason everyone was smiling again. The staff treated her with newfound respect, But Margaret stayed humble, always kind. A week later, she quietly purchased a beautiful little house near the countryside. Simple, peaceful, and surrounded by trees. She arranged for Tom's mother to work there as a caretaker, giving both of them a fresh start. Meanwhile, her son, David, hadn't called once since leaving her there. But she didn't cry anymore. She had cried enough for a lifetime. One evening, she looked at the sunset from her new porch, a soft smile on her face. "Maybe this is what birthdays are for," she whispered. "New beginnings." The bitterness inside her was slowly replaced by strength. And though she hadn't yet told her son the truth, that she was now a millionaire, deep down she knew the day would come when fate would make them meet again. Months passed, and Margaret's life bloomed like spring after a harsh winter. Her new home was filled with laughter, music, and the scent of fresh roses from her garden. She hosted tea afternoons for her neighbors, many of them lonely souls she had met at the nursing home. Then one morning there was a knock at her door. Margaret opened it to find a face she hadn't seen in months, her son David. His expression was one of guilt, confusion, and desperation all at once. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes hollow. "Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. I didn't know where else to go. My company failed. The house is gone. Emily left me." For a long moment, Margaret just looked at him. Once, his voice could have broken her heart. But now it was just an echo from another life. "I see," she said softly. "Come in." He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the elegant living room, the fine curtains, the soft music, the warmth that filled the air. "Mom, how can you afford all this?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. Margaret smiled faintly. "The lottery," she said. David blinked. "The what?" "I won it," she replied. "A week after you left me at the nursing home." He sank onto the couch, stunned. "Mom, But she raised a hand. "You don't need to explain," she said gently. "You made your choice. I've forgiven you. But I've also learned I don't need anyone's approval to live." Tears welled up in David's eyes. "Mom, I was wrong. Please, can I stay with you?" Margaret looked at him, her heart heavy but strong. "You can visit," she said softly. "But my home is for those who never turned their backs when I needed them most." As he left that evening, Margaret watched him go, the wind brushing against her silver hair. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful, as she whispered to the fading light. "Life always gives back what you give to others. Sometimes it just takes time."